Navigating emotional limits. This is a real skills workshop on savvy, relating, and engaging. And I don't like that I have limits, but I'm human. And one of the things that helps me with one of my limits is being able to co-create. So like co-creating for me creates more capacity. I still have a limit, and getting to do it this workshop with Kathy Vartuli from the Intimacy Dojo and Thriving Now is something that really helps me. So thank you for expanding my capacity and reach here, Kathy.
Oh, my honor and pleasure. It does the same for me. I'm someone who loves collaborating. And I think that one of the things we can do as we get savvy, when young people are young, they often don't feel like there's any limits. They can do anything, and especially I see teenage boys. I don't like to gender, but in general, the testosterone and societal pressures or whatever, they act like there's no limit. They can do anything. They're like don't have any concept of death. And as we get older, it's like, oh, we do have limits, but we can be savvy about them, and we can actually find ways like collaboration or other ways that we can get a lot done in a much more safe and savvy and relationship friendly way than we might have had when we were younger. So I'm really excited if you're, the people showing up here live and the people listening later, because you're looking at something in a different way than a lot of people do. You're questioning the everyday flow of life, and I think that's just an amazing thing to do. So the geek in me bows to the geek in you. I'm not sure that's not namaste, maybe it's geekiste or something.
Well, we do things different. And I think that's part of emotional freedom for all, and particularly to maximize our sense of safety, respect, and freedom in ourselves and in relationship with others. That the limits are something that uh, there are a lot of parties that want to ignore our human limits. For example, bosses can can say, if I ignore that person's limit, their normal limit, I can push them. I can put pressure on them. I can create a fear of losing a job or something like that. Well, that's a bit like I have a vehicle, and the law says there's 5 seatbelts, so the capacity is 5 people. Now you got to be pretty um, willing to be squished, let's say, to sit in the middle seat of the back seat. But you know what? If we needed to evacuate, I could fit 11 people in that vehicle.
They'd be very friendly, but they'd be
Okay.
fit in that car.
I really could fit 11 people in that vehicle. And so what's the limit? Is the limit 5? Well, 4 is comfortable. 5 is squished. You can do that. I use it a lot of times just with one person. On a full tank of gas, there's a limit. Um, and, even if I could take 11 people, I wouldn't necessarily be able to take 11 tons of rock, for example. The tires would blow out, the axles would crack, and things like that. When we think about a house or a car or other things that we have, we know that there are limits. You can overwhelm your computer and be telling it to do too many things at once. It reaches its limit. It it gasps, it overheats, it does certain things before it does that, but it has a limit. So as a human being, we can think about physical limits like our physical strength, our capacity, and things like that. Our specialty as a circle, as a community, is to look at the emotional limits as well, because it's physio emotional. I got up at 4 o'clock. Okay. I had a nap. That's great. But 4 a.m. get up with a sick daughter, I've used some of my capacity. Now, by tending to myself and co-creating, like if this was a workshop that I was needing to do on my own, I would have rescheduled it. By the fact that I could sync up with Kathy and we have a lot of history and trust, guess what? I may reach a limit. I give myself that option to reach an energetic limit, and even call it an early night. But I want all of us to walk with a skill, because I don't think it's ever going to be like, maybe for some people, they completely embrace, I have limits. But for people that grow, when you grow in skill, you've got more capacity, you've got different limits. But then on a day where you're kind of tired, your limits are not going to feel very expansive. They may feel kind of squished. Um, I want us to be able to recognize where our limits are, especially as we get to the edges, to accept our limits, make it easier to accept the limits of others, and then be able to adapt inside of ourselves with our own guidance, as well as in savvy relating with others.
Yeah,
How does
I
that
think
strike
it's
you, Kathy?
I love what you shared, and using the car analogy, I think boundaries would be easier to accept if there was, say, like a limiter on our car. Like if there's some cars that, like, if you work for a corporation, they literally will not go over 55 miles an hour, and that's the limit. And if your boss is like, you need to get here faster, I'm like, you put that limiter on. Like, there's nothing I can do. There's a hard and fast limiter that's there in that particular car. In our individual lives, though, there isn't. There's, like Rick says, there's could be like you had a sick baby, or the dishwasher broke or something. Like things are happening in your life that are also pulling from the same reserves. And the other side of that is we have a built-in emergency hatch. Our
Yeah,
survival brain can actually, in a crisis, we can do much more than we think we can. People have the stories many people have heard about, like a mom lifting the car off her kid. They're true. That can happen. If the survival brain is activated in the right way, we are stronger, or we can do things. Or if our boss is scaring us into, you will lose your job if you don't do this, we can may do a heroic act. But the problem is, I think our culture, and our corporate culture especially, tends to think we should be driving in that red zone all the time. Some people do. And we can't. Our systems literally, it's like Rick's car. If you put 3 tons of gravel in it to go someplace, it's wearing it, it's tearing it, it's breaking it down.
yeah.
And it's great that we can do these heroic acts. The survival brain is amazing that it can like kick in and help us do something that we wouldn't normally be able to do. And we also get to understand that, hey, that was a heroic act and I might need some self-care. And that's not my new limit. That's a once in a while kind of thing. So I think it's
Mhm.
hard for us because we want to seem very confident. We want to seem as capable as everyone around us. We want to have the status of being a go-to person that can get things done. Some of us do. And we've seen, oh, I worked 20 hours, I got all that done, I saved the day. Why can't I work 20 hours the next day? Why am I only wanting to work 3 hours and then curl up in the corner and suck my thumb for a while? Like, what's wrong with me? And there's that self talk that we give ourselves that
What's
can really,
wrong with me?
yeah,
Okay, so we use a tool called EFT tapping. We're about to jump right in. If you're new to tapping, thrivingnow.com/tapping is a place to find that guide. It's free. We have a full course on it. But you can follow along, repeat the words. You'll notice that Kathy and I echo back and forth between us. You're on mute, so you can do the same thing. So there's this energy of I should. Um, and the chat is open as well. So if you have a should about a limit, like I have, I should be able to bop, bop, bop. That would be good to add to the workshop. That's one of the ways that we do that, is we take input from our live audience and adapt where we're going and the things that we focus on. Um, and if you're watching the replay, hi, welcome. And you can put that in the comment area and share that, and we can explore that together too. So shoulds, I should be able to, I should always be able to, I must be able to. Do you want to lead us in a tapping for some of that around limits?
yeah, I invite everyone, if you can, let yourself just come here and now. Rick has created the circle and I'm supporting it. We're all here actually contributing to it. Just let yourself feel the love and connection, the compassion we each bring, the questioning we each bring. Let yourself be here and now. If you have Facebook or social media open, I invite you to close it. The cats will still be there later. Give yourself this time. Let yourself be here and now, and just take a breath and notice your butt in the chair. One of the biggest blocks I see to people making improvements in their life and changing patterns is the should that we should be able to multitask. We should be able to keep track of a lot of different things. This is really sacred space, and we invite you to just bring all of your attention here. Let yourself be in the space, nurtured. Let the cells of your body be nurtured by the energy here. Give yourself a place where you don't have to be rushing, using adrenaline, multitasking, trying to get everything done before bed. Let yourself just be here and experience, kind of bask in this healing energy. It's a really loving thing that's created here, and we want you here. We think you deserve to be healed. We think you deserve to be loved and have a chance to clear out some of the noise that's going on in your life. Because life is really hard when we rush through it and there's all this noise. And then sometimes we rush all the way right to the grave and we're like, where did my life go? And I think life is in those moments where we can slow down and just be with ourselves and with the people around us. And this is a great place to practice. So take one more nice deep breath. And let's just start tapping. We're going to start in the karate chop point. Even though I should do a lot more than I do,
Even though I should do a lot more than I do.
they all say so.
They all say so.
I say so.
I say so.
Maybe I've been wrong.
Huh. Maybe I've been wrong.
Even though I should multitask all the time.
Even though I should multitask all the time.
I should work 20 hours a day
I should work 20 hours a day
and still fit in a workout
and still fit in a workout
and
and
clean the
food
house
and clean the house and
and
sleep.
take care of the kids.
Wah, I'm going to cry. I've reached my limit.
Even though I tell myself all those shoulds.
Even though I tell myself all those shoulds.
What if someone tricked me
What if someone tricked me?
and
Ooh,
I'm not actually supposed to do all those things?
and I'm not actually supposed to do all of those things.
Top of the head. Corporate culture loves people that multitask.
Corporate culture loves people who multitask,
Eyebrow. And they love it if I want to work 20 hours a day.
and they love it if I want to work 20 hours a day and get paid
Side of
for
the
8.
eye. Yeah, side of the eye. But that's not going to ensure I keep my job.
But that is not going to ensure that I keep my job.
Under the
Hmm.
eye, it's not going to ensure I keep my health.
It's definitely not going to ensure I keep my health
Under the nose, or the relationships that matter to me.
or the relationships that matter to me.
Chin, there's lots of shoulds about what I need to do every day.
There are lots of shoulds about what I need to do every day.
Collarbone, and what if I realize my body is an organic being?
What if I realize my body is an organic being
Under the arm that has more or less energy some days.
that definitely has more or less energy some days?
Top of the head, what if I just start with what is?
What if I start with what is
Eyebrow, rather than what should be.
rather than what should be?
Side of the eye, how much energy do I have right now?
Huh. How much energy do I have right now? And what flavors?
Under the eye, how much interest do I have in this?
How much interest do I have in this?
Under the nose, what if I could align my energy and my interest?
What if I could align my energy and my interest?
Chin, acknowledging that there's probably a few things I need to do every day.
Acknowledging there are things I need to do every day.
Collarbone, and what if I was kinder to myself?
And I want to be kinder to myself.
Under the arm, what if I could toss some of these shoulds away?
What if I could toss some of these shoulds away
Top of the head, and find a new organic balance.
and find a new organic balance?
Just take a breath and just notice how you feel. You may have your survival brain for some people, it might be going, danger, danger, no, 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 I have to run, I have to push. And some people might be going, oh, that could feel really good, but I'm not sure. Like, we're in very different, we have mixed feelings inside about something like this because we have been rewarded and conditioned to do a lot, to get the kudos and the pats on the back for like, oh my God, you got all that done. there's a lot of reward for people around that. And yet it doesn't actually make life more fulfilling unless we've really aligned, where do I want to use my energy? Is this aligned with what I want to create in the world? And we do have to like pay taxes, and I don't like paying taxes. I'm sure most people don't. There are some like infrastructure things in the world that we kind of just, that's part of dealing with it. Maybe we can find easier ways to do it or tap on the resistance. But we're not saying that everything is going to be eating bonbons on the couch, but letting go of some of the shoulds that came along for the ride from our parents and from our teachers and from people around us that have just been floating in our internal computer and running us, that can be very powerful.
Which you point to, I think, one of the profound skills that we're working on as a community here. So if I should it on myself to come and do the workshop tonight, and I think that there was at least some of that in the background. I'm noticing inside of myself that that tapping on shoulds, there was a little bit of, trying to boost my energy from a should.
Yeah.
Now, I'll be honest. If you had said, "Well, do you really desire to do this workshop tonight?" I would have said, "No, desire is not my come from." It often is, but I was at a number of limits from what I tended to today. My tank was started off the day less than a half a tank. And it was down pretty much. But the cool thing about emotional range is that you don't just have one tank. Okay. So, like, my tank of desire and eagerness, meh, actually, you have to kind of force me if I'm going to try to use what's in there. But my desire to be with my community and to relax into co-creating, to get to explore, um, I love being of service. I've been in my tank, my limit around service right now is like I don't have a lot of extra capacity. So my come from tonight is coming from my heart, like a desire to see you all on the screen, to feel connected to my tribe across the world, um, to get to spend an hour and a half with Kathy, my best friend and co-creator, to be in an adult space, like um, and so it's it's one of the things that I want us to consider is a lot of times we say, well, I just don't have the energy for that. Um, that may be true from the tank that you're looking at. That may be empty or depleted. You've hit your lower limit. The fuel light is on. You could still get somewhere, but you're protecting it. And I am not suggesting this as a strategy to get, because you should do more and you should do things. I'm wanting to have the ecosystem as a part of this. Like, someone said, I should be able to be consistent. Well, I have a little tiny tank of consistency, like, so it's precious to me, and I can pull it out and I can be consistent about things sometimes. I consistently show up on time for the most part, for clients and activities and things like that. So there's a consistency tank. But if you said I should be able to be consistent all the time, here's what I look at. Like, that tank has gotten bigger in the last 1,000 days by being consistent with Duolingo learning Spanish and my morning mile. So I'm about up to 1,000 days on, I'm over 1,000 days on one, and about, so like little bits of consistency, which I've tapped on, like all the things that have come up all the times. It's not a have to, it's a want to. So my consistency tank has gotten bigger. I want to acknowledge that our capacity can grow through this work. By clearing out shoulds, it's like taking a rock out. Like I should be consistent. You might as well pour concrete into my little precious container of capacity to be consistent. Shoulds are like that, big piles of should inside that capacity. If I clear out the shoulds, what am I doing? Well, I'm recognizing I don't have that much. I'm not by nature a consistent person. I'm more freedom, spontaneous. Does that make sense? Um, so if I recognize about myself, what's the next thing? It's like, oh, but people would love it if I was more consistent and blah, 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 blah. I would love to be able to, blah, blah, I clear that out through acceptance. And this is how I might tap on that. Even though by nature I am not the most consistent person.
Even though by nature I'm not the most consistent person.
I've met some consistent people.
I've met some consistent people.
I'm more spontaneous.
I'm more spontaneous.
I really value freedom in my schedule
I really value freedom in my schedule
and my choices.
and my choices.
I accept that on the spectrum of consistency,
I accept that on the spectrum of consistency,
I'm not the most consistent person.
I'm not the most consistent person.
And I deeply and completely accept myself anyway.
And I deeply and completely accept myself anyway.
Top of head. But I want to be consistent.
I want to be consistent.
Eyebrow, they wanted me to be consistent.
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 I do value consistency.
I devalue consistency.
I'm no longer repulsed by consistency.
I'm no longer repulsed by consistency.
And I want a little more capacity.
I want a little more capacity.
And maybe taking the shoulds out will help with that capacity.
And maybe taking the shoulds out will help with that capacity.
Ooh, I already feel like I have more capacity.
I already feel like I have more capacity.
Ah. So, like you recognize something in yourself. What is the first step in emotional freedom? It's not the first required step. You don't have to do it this way, but like I find that if I recognize something, I try to build up my acceptance of who I am, where I am, how I feel, how I behave, as long as I'm not violating and actively harming someone else. Like that, I think falls into okay, that must change for me to live with integrity. But if consistency, it's part of our neurodiversity. It's part of our diversity of human design and personality and all the unique things that bring us there. Someone said I should just take it. Now, I have met therapists that you can scream in their face the most personal, insulting, horrific things, including threats to their person, their family. And do you know what? Energetically, as an energetically sensitive person, this isn't even getting to them. They are like the Buddha witness of this play, right? They're present, but they are utterly unmoved. That ain't me. Okay. And so if you should just take it, how do you want to be? Like, are there things that you can take? Maybe like there are definitely some things I can take. It's bigger than my consistency, but it's not like some of the superhero, they can take anything no matter how energetically discordant.
It can also be useful to look at where did I learn this rule? Because
Mm.
it may have been a parent that was very emotionally inconsistent, wanted us to just take that. They want, like, did I learn this from something I desire for myself, or is this something because people around us do want us to be consistent and easy and all these things, like we should be able to work hard. They should on us because they have those desires. But was it really in our best interest to take it, or was it a wish or desire of someone of power in our world that wanted us to just take it so they didn't have to learn to self-regulate or do their own work? So I think finding that out can be really, really useful, or kind of going, is this something I actually want for me, or is this something I learned, this should that was kind of dropped into my soup when I was little, and I just kept carrying it around. And I think that can be really helpful because when shoulds come from, especially external ones, but internal ones, I find them very rigid. They're like a driving, kind of like you're going this way. And they're often, at least in my mind, and I'm curious if other people notice, there's a lot of unconscious, maybe just subconscious other shoulds. I should do it. I should take it. I should be able to take it, and I should be there calm and grounded, and my clothes should be all nice, and I should be like, look serene. Like there's a lot of other shoulds in there that keep me from playing, or, like someone screaming at me and maybe I make faces. Like, what would, I don't, there's no room for play when I have these shoulds going on. And I think one of the other things that makes it very hard for us to deal with it, and they suck our energy, is because we're in direct conflict with these shoulds about pushing ourselves. It's in direct conflict with our survival brain, which always wants to conserve some energy. Our survival brain knows we don't know what's coming down the pike. Like we could exhaust ourselves with our kid, and then our mom calls that night with some dastardly news or needs some emotional support, or the smoke starts coming out of the washing machine or whatever. Like we don't know what's coming next, and our survival brain is geared toward a time where that could be a lion in our den, or something that we really have to life or death thing. So our shoulds of I should push myself, I should be able to take it, I should be able to just drive myself right to depletion, is in direct conflict with our survival brain, which is like, conserve some energy. We don't know what we're going to need to do tonight or later. When we're in that kind of conflict, there's a lot of burning rubber and wasted energy. There's just, our survival brain is super strong. It works against us subconsciously. A lot of people I work with on procrastination, it's not really that they don't want to do the work, it's that their survival brain is afraid of them expending too much energy or getting hurt or something. So whenever you're feeling that kind of, I consider it a burning rubber feeling, where I'm just kind of trying to push myself and yet I feel the energy going down. Oh, am I working with my survival brain? Is it feeling afraid or threatened by what my intentions are? And it can be hard on this. Like, our society does push that you should just be able to get everything done. I was part of Landmark Education for a long time. I got a lot from them, and I also have thrown away a lot of their education. One of their things is, yes, you can work 20-hour days. Yes, you can get everything done. You can super focus and get things done. You can create, and this is something they did, like, you need to get across town and you don't have enough time, you set the intention that you'll get there and you kind of will yourself there. And I mean, I think it kept people focused, like people that would wander off and get their car keys and then forget something else. But it was also really hard on my body. It felt like I was revving the engine, the adrenaline was going all the time, and I was fighting my survival brain, which was like, wait, you're running yourself you can barely have the energy to walk to the bedroom to go to sleep. And to a survival brain, that's not good. We don't, if there is a tiger in the house, you need to have the energy to run away. So realize that you could be fighting yourself, and some of the energy loss may not be actual energy because of the should, but because your survival brain doesn't feel seen and heard. And when we can kind of go, oh, I'm an organic being that actually has needs, and I have a finite amount of energy, sometimes we can find new ways to do things, and we can also soften that stance with our survival brain. So it's not so much a battle, but like, hey, survival brain, I know this is scary, but I'm going to leave enough energy so you can take care of yourself tonight. And let's get this done together. It'll make life better for us. Does that make sense? We can
It
work
does.
together versus fighting ourselves.
Someone mentioned that should often equals shame. And I
Yeah.
think that's, I want to take this if it's okay, to look at the relating aspect of this and the engaging with others. So
Mhm.
should is that like, hey, I've got this emotional limit. Are there any shoulds involved in that? If there are, those are things that we can start cleaning up ourselves. Another doorway can be to take something that, um, like, people are judging me, right? And they're judgy, right? And the tapping can be recognizing the shoulds on both sides. Like, where is the limit that's active here? And using shoulds, especially if you get to the place where when you use the word should, there's a little bit of a, I'm not going to shit on myself. I'm not actually, don't want to shit on other people either. So the tapping on the things that you do around should builds up a skill of recognizing that should isn't where you want to stay energetically, but it's a real pathway because that's where the shame and a lot of conflict is. So if I have a really judgy person who gets really unkind and critical in my world, this is a way that I might approach that with the shoulds. Okay. And yeah, take the best, leave the rest, compost what's, yeah. Even I should be able to take it.
Even though I should be able to take it.
Their family,
They're family.
I should be able to take this.
I should be able to take this.
They should be more kind.
They should be more kind.
They should be less critical.
They should be less critical.
Top head. They should be less critical.
They should be less critical.
Eyebrow. I should be able to take their criticism like
I
water
should be
off a
able
duck's back.
I should be able to take their criticism like water off a duck's back.
Side of the eye. But they're shitting on me.
But they're shitting on me.
Under the eye. It's not water off a duck's back.
It's not water off a duck's back.
On the nose. They shouldn't shit on me.
They shouldn't shit on me.
Chin. I'm shitting on them.
I'm shitting on them.
Hold on. I'm wondering if they have a limit
I'm wondering if they have a limit.
under the arm. They don't seem to be able to control themselves.
They don't seem to be able to control themselves.
Top of the head. They can't take their judgments and just hold them to themselves.
They can't take their judgment and hold them to themselves.
Eyebrow. They're limited into what they can hold.
They're limited in what they can hold.
Side of the eye. They're definitely limited in what they can accept.
They're definitely limited in what they can accept.
Under the eye. They are so human.
They are so human.
Under those. I am so human.
I am so human.
Chin. We do have limits here.
We do have limits here.
Hold on. And it's painful for me at times.
And it's painful for me at times.
Under the arm. What if I accepted that we both have limits?
What if I accepted that we both have limits?
How might that change how we relate?
How might that change how we relate?
So as soon as I do that, there's a mix of things that happens. But one of the things is I feel more resourced. That does not mean that I'm seeking out to tolerate behavior that is unacceptable to me, that is hard for me, that actually violates a limit or depletes me really quickly. And my come from is, okay, this person clearly is, I can shit on them all day long, but their capacity to be with contrast, for example, without judging and criticizing seems really limited.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you are close to someone, you probably notice that, there are people or circumstances or topics where they really just can't control. They're limited in their control. It would be like someone driving on ice is not in control of friction the same way. And you're just like, okay, they're really out of control. They do not have that savvy. They're limited in their savvy. They're limited in their emotional intelligence. I believe that parts of our brain are constantly judging, discerning. I like this. I don't like this. That's contrast. That sucks. That is not the way I would do it. It's whether you can be with that without suppressing your own clarity, and without it like I want to live in a world where people do have more savvy, they have more capacity to be like, that is definitely not the way that I would do it. But this person I care about hasn't asked me for advice, is not asking me for critique, and they're a free person too. What do I, what really feels right for me? That's very different from a knee jerk. People that are in knee jerk reaction and criticism, if we see it as a limit, we're going to be at least more savvy in relating to them. Like we won't expect, we won't be surprised. Like, you know, if you say boo to some people, they wet themselves. If I share something that someone's likely to criticize, they're going to criticize it. If I'm savvy, I recognize their limit in acceptance.
I think
And I
that
think it's, go ahead.
I want to emphasize another side to that is we don't have to just take people's verbal abuse. Like we can.
I thought I was clear on that, but that
Okay,
thank you for
I
reaffirming
just,
it.
yeah, I think I love what you're saying. I'm not taking away from that at all, but I do think that, especially in our society, we're kind of taught if we love someone, we put up with it. And I do want to emphasize that if someone's being abusive or like shitting on you in ways that aren't good for you to receive, like it's a two-way street. For me, there's certain people, close family can get to the sore spots. They know the way to say things to just kind of like, ooh, they get you. And I have certain topics I don't talk about with certain family members. I just like I set a limit on that because it's better for me. So there's two people relating. We get to take care of ourselves too while we're trying to be more aware. And you did say that, but I just think the way the conversation went, I wanted to emphasize that.
There's a lot of us have been through trauma where what we were told and forced even to tolerate the intolerable. So reinforcing that we might do that another couple dozen times.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I there are people, for example, that actually don't have the empathy app. So they are definitely going to be limited in their empathy. On their diversity scale, they just don't have the empathy app. There are people whose emotional intelligence is super genius compared to mine. Um, I I've had to work and expand my capacity for emotional intelligence. I'm grateful for the work I've done. I think it's a fluency. Um, but every day I run into people that have, that know less emotional intelligent language and other things. They have limits. And it's not that I want to, my primitive brain wants everyone else to behave a certain way. And if they don't, I want to shit on them. I believe that if somebody's in their primitive brain, their range of options is very limited. And that goes for people I love who are rarely in their primitive brain. But if they're in their primitive brain and I'm wanting to be savvy, the first thing is, oh, they're in their primitive brain. And that goes for a 2-year-old, it goes for any age. Are they in their primitive brain? If they're in their primitive brain, they have a very narrow set of choices. If I expect them to go outside of those limits that the primitive brain imposes, neurologically imposes them, I'm actually not being savvy. I'm human. I may be in my primitive brain too. But the savvy part of it is also recognizing the limits that come. And that's not the same as excusing. I can say that's not okay while recognizing someone's in their primitive brain. In fact, I'm much more likely to say, not okay, I'm taking space to someone who's in their primitive brain than someone I'm having a non-primitive brain dialogue with,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um,
So where would
yeah.
you, we have some, is there anything in the chat that
Yeah,
you want
one
to
that
do some
stood out for
tapping
me,
on?
I'd love to talk and tap about is that I should be able to go out more. I love that the simplicity of that statement, but I think there's a lot to unpack there. Um, I went through a period over the last few years where I didn't have a lot of energy and I was trying to drive myself with my brain. And based on something else I saw from this person, I think this might be what's going on. And please, again, take what feels right for you. Sometimes we decide with our head what we need to do to be ahead, and we're not really asking our body or our nervous system or our energy what's right for us. And when we try to drive ourselves with our head and not listen to the rest of us, there can be a fear. Just like a little kid, if a little kid is aware their parent isn't really paying attention to their needs and just trying to check off boxes, there's a fear like, you're not listening. Am I being going to be taken care of? Are you going to recognize what's going on? If I need something. And for a while, I really shut down. I had a lot going on in my life, and I was trying to drive myself with my head, and I noticed how hard it was. Like, even I'd be sitting on the couch and I was like, I need to go do these, I need to XYZ, but I wasn't really checking in and being with the rest of me. And it was very, very hard to get those things done. And sometimes I would sit there literally for 4 hours trying to get myself to do these tasks. And they just felt so heavy. And I was driving myself with my head as opposed to like, okay, body, what do you want? And as I've been coming out of that, I've been letting my body do more of what it wants to do in terms of like, I will sometimes find myself getting up and doing tasks that I would normally never do and just enjoying them. But the noise in my head was so loud, it was overriding all the other signals in my body. And I think when we have a loud should about, I should be able to go out more, and I picked this one because it's very simple. It's like a direct, I should go out more. Um, there can be a lot of noise, and it can prevent us from like, what would my body like to do? How would my body like going out to look like? Is there a yes, yes versus this loud, authoritative, this is what I need to do? And maybe it looks very different than my shoulds have in my head. I work with someone and he talks a lot about having things that are just below conscious level. And I thought that was really profound for me. It's like I have all these shoulds that are just below, I'm not really aware of them, but they're running a lot of things. And when I say I should do something, they're all riding along, and I think it has to look a certain way, and it's very rigid, and there's no play, and there's no room for me to accommodate anything. Versus like, hey, body, I think I would love to go out. I think it might be good for us. How does that feel to you? What are you scared of? Can I listen to your fears? And I've seen this with people all ages, but especially kids. You're like, oh, really? What are you afraid of? Can you tell me about it? And in our society, I think we ignore the fears. We want to suppress them and run past them and ignore them. But sometimes just letting someone tell you about what their fears are and noticing, like, oh, you're afraid that if you go out, maybe, I'm making this up. I don't know what this person might be feeling, but oh, if I go out, I might not be safe, or I might not have enough energy to get back home, or something bad might happen. And really listening and being with our system, going, wow, that does sound really scary. That sounds really frightening. Um, do you think we might be able to handle it if that happened? Like, can you give me a specific scenario rather than some amorphous fear? Like, do you think we could handle it if this happened? What would we do? And coming up with solutions, there's a way to get out of the brain, the direction of the brain that just wants to drive everything, and becoming a whole organic person, um, and inviting all of us forward with that. Does that make, am I explaining that in a way that's clear, Rick? Can you?
Yeah, it fits my own experience of like the morning mile today. It was hot. There was an air quality alert. I didn't know what I was going to do, but my body said it would be great to get in the car and just go somewhere, and without anything else being clear. And what was interesting is that once I was in the car and my energy was moving, a tank was filling, like
Yeah.
the tank that needed some energetic space, just and movement. And as that tank filled, it was like, you know, one little tiny loop at the Folk Art Center for 1/3 of a mile. That's the morning mile, is 1/3 of a mile. That's it, buddy. And as soon as I landed on that, it felt like it was a sweet spot. It was touching, like I had limits that I was aware of, but I also had this tank that was wanting to be filled. The chi of movement, for example, um, is is a bit different internally. Like what I felt was filled up and what I felt was drawn down. I'm getting the picture of those little, your inkjet printers that have the magenta and yellow and cyan and black and photo black, and like each of those comes together to paint all of these millions of colors. And for me, the savvy part of the skill here is recognizing that um, I may need to craft an activity or a choice with one limit, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It, like you were saying, it's gifting to the whole of you as an organic being a level of depth and engagement that isn't just with our head and our shoulds.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Can we do a
and
little
it's,
tapping on that?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to interrupt your thought either. So just take a nice deep breath if you would like. Feels good too. Karate chop. Even though my brain's been in charge a lot lately,
Even though my brain's been in charge a lot lately,
and I often let it run things,
and I've often let it run things,
I think I'd like to be an organic being some more.
I'd like to be a full organic being some more.
So I'm going to invite my body to share what it thinks,
I'm going to invite my body to share what it thinks,
and even my nervous system.
and even my nervous system, which definitely has its limits.
Top of the head. That's going to give whole new perspectives to what I should do.
That's going to give an entirely new perspective to what I choose to
I wrote, and it might
do.
help me play some more.
It definitely would help me play some more.
Side of the eye, I have all these subconscious shoulds that my brain's attached to.
I have all these subconscious shoulds that my brain's attached to.
Under the eye, it wants things to look a certain way.
It wants things to look a certain way, even if I have limits.
Under the nose, and sometimes my brain learned that from TV,
Sometimes that my brain learned that from TV
chin, or watching my parents.
or watching my parents.
Collarbone, but I didn't really examine those subconscious shoulds.
I did not really examine those subconscious shoulds,
Under the arm, and they don't have very good logic for my body.
and they don't have good logic for my body.
Top of the head, I'd really like all of me to be served by what I do.
I'd like all of me to be served by what I do
So
and
maybe
by
I'll
what
let,
I don't do.
yes. So maybe I'll reevaluate what I should do
I'm definitely going to reevaluate what I should do.
and just take a breath. And I love poking at shoulds, so I should go out more. Why? Like asking why. Like, oh, I would like the adventure. Like, if there's reasons that will enhance your life, that's great to dig into. But if it's other people think I should, it's like sometimes I would go the other way. Like, if I never did this should, what would happen? I have this should about my laundry. I love it to be folded and put away. And yet I have survived many a week living out of the laundry hamper with clean clothes that are slightly wrinkled. And as I go through and, like, it's not my favorite, but nobody died. Nothing bad happened. The worst that happened was when I had a cat. She loved to sleep on them and I'd have to defur them in the morning. But, the world kept going. So that should, which seems to like must do these things, wasn't really a valid threat, if that makes sense. So kind
Mhm.
of poking at it, like looking at it from like, what would I get out of this? And also what happens if I don't do this? If I never went out again, there's, maybe that feels very limited and that's not what you want to do. And I'm not trying to take that away. And there are people that survive that way, that have very lovely lives with what they have around them. So I think when we start asking those questions, we start seeing what's really important to us, and then we can start working towards clearing out anything that's in the way versus
Mhm.
like just the things that we saw on TV and our brains decided they were the right thing to do.
So after we're going to take a break for 7 minutes, and when we come back, we're going to touch on upper limits and lower limits because we have both, and capacity, and how trauma fits some limits and some of the diversity that we are going to run into with those that we care about and those that we run into randomly. So, all right, I'm going to stop the recording. Welcome back. So, navigating emotional limits. I think there's, when you think about like having a personal trainer who's working through the limits of your biceps, your triceps, your back, your legs, your butt, how much balance you have under what level weight. There's, it's sort of easy to say, well, I definitely have an upper limit. Um, when it comes to emotions, I think especially for positive emotions, a lot of times um, we don't even have the concept of like too much joy, you know, at too much eagerness, like you have an upper limit. So, for example, and my limit changes, um, if somebody is so eager that they're jumping up and down, they're yelling, they're yay, 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 like there's a very narrow window where that's okay. If it continues into the part of it where I'm trying to get our stuff together to go out the door, then I've reached my limit on eagerness. I really like, if the eagerness continues, what happens inside of me? Well, I own that loud noises of eagerness and lots of physical movement, and especially if it's coming at my body, I have some upper limits. It feels good to have people eager for like, yay, we're going to pizza. Um, but if everyone all of a sudden um, goes beyond my limit, what happens inside of me? Um, my nervous system doesn't know what to do with all that stimulation. Now, acknowledging, like, there's a part of me that, yeah, immediately shoulds on myself. And I've already toned it down quite a bit over the last years of living with such eagerness. Um, like, hey, I have a limit and it changes. And sometimes I really appreciate eagerness, and sometimes it's over my limit. And it's not his fault. What if it's not my fault either? Um, how do I want to savvy communicate my upper limits, right? How do I want to communicate my upper limits?
How do I want to communicate my upper limits?
How do I want to communicate my upper limits?
How do I want to communicate my upper limits?
So, like, one way I like, I believe that part of savvy relating around upper limits is to have some choices that feel good to you to say, like, hey, that's enough for me. That's reached my limit. That's enough for me. Um, I need us to quiet down and focus on getting out the door. Now that I need us, that makes it a we space. Now, if that doesn't get through, say, I need it to be quiet so that I can focus on getting my stuff together to take us to pizza. Now, notice the difference. Um, you need to be quiet. Now, that's saying um, that person is wrong. And I feel that there's a savvy in owning my upper limits when I reach them. And I'm noticing that this go round of parenting again, I have two adults who are my children, this latest go round of parenting young ones, I am noticing that um, owning my own limits creates a dynamic where there's more freedom for everybody. And by cleaning up the shoulds around my upper limits, noise, for example, my upper limit around noise. Sometimes I love a dance party. I just love a dance party. I can go to an ecstatic dance. And you know what? I'm having a great time. And then I hit my limit. And I'm like, I have hit my limit. I am going to go outside. Now, what does that say? It gives other people information to navigate their world. It says, oh, Rick's hit his limit and he's okay going outside. Or I've hit my limit and I really am going to need to leave with you all in the car in the next 5 to 10 minutes. The when I didn't think about what's my upper limit on ecstasy, what's my upper limit on excitement, what's my can I pause, can I give myself space, when I didn't acknowledge that there's an upper limit on like technology work. I have a really my brain loves technology about 2 hours a day. If I go above, I can go to 4, but if it goes to a full-time job, I have a real problem. I'm well beyond my limit. And that was one of the things that really caused me disease. I think if I focus so much on my own self, I have an upper limit. Like, oh, that's really good. It's really good to be in meditation and solitude and other things. My family was away for the first time in 3 years. I was alone in the house for 2 days. Guess what? My upper limit on tending to myself and tending to my nest, which I love to do, like that's really good for me. I reached an upper limit, and then I started, like, what happens when we reach an upper limit? You get shaky, you get like, or you do something to drive your energy down. So are there any upper limits that you want to share, Kathy? Anyone on the chat want to share an upper limit, which you might like have some judgment about yourself?
I think that sometimes I've noticed myself, and for some people I've worked with, that when we reach that upper limit, if we feel like we shouldn't have an upper limit or if we're uncomfortable about it, part of us can get very afraid. I've seen this where people actually hurt themselves. They're having a good time and they'll fall or they'll hurt themselves or they'll start a fight or they'll run into a wall. They'll do something to kind of jar them back into the more negative space because it feels safer. So it doesn't always come out with, oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable. It might come out like, oh, I get super clumsy every time I start getting, like, I spend more than 10 minutes in this energy space. So I just want to invite you, like, if you notice you have a pattern, I tend to get in a fight with someone or I tend to, like, hurt myself. Is there something you feel afraid of? Are you losing your ground and your connection with, like, what's real and what's valuable to you? And I think our survival brain can cause us to hurt ourselves if it thinks that we're getting out of control or that we might forget to pay attention to safety or other things that are important to us. So it may not come across as a conscious thought. It might come out sideways in other ways too. Um, or some people get sick. I used to get sick. I didn't have any boundaries or limits myself, so my body would break down and get sick when I couldn't say no for myself. So just different ways you can notice that upper limit that might be, oh, I really want to do this, but I'm not sure what I need to navigate. And I think that if we can do some quiet meditation or tapping or work with a coach, and like, what am I actually afraid is going to happen? Am I going to lose connection with what's important, or I'm going to get so carried away with the adrenaline and the good feelings, or like, oh, okay, so what if I take 5 minutes and just go step outside and breathe? Or what if how can I reassure myself that I'm not going to get swept away with all this, the happiness, the good feelings I'm having, or the excitement? And just different people express it differently. Like Emerald, Rick's kid, he's amazing and he has a lot of energy. And I'm on the phone, so I'm a little bit farther away, but it's sometimes I'm like, oh wow, 2 minutes of that was lovely, and now it's just a lot for my nervous system. And Rick will talk to him about, hey, I have different needs. It's not that he's bad. And I was brought up in a family where if you didn't anticipate other people's needs, if you didn't tone yourself within their limits, you were bad. There was like a shooting on you. Versus Rick's telling him, hey, I love that you're enthusiastic, and my nervous system needs to express it differently in this space. Can we find a way so you can be excited? And I can also, because we're cohabitating. And I think that's just a lovely way to share that with someone rather than telling them they're wrong or bad for being excited. Because then I think that many of us got our upper limits from someone saying, don't be too excited. My mother gets very nervous when I'm happy, when I'm excited about something. Her brain is like, oh, bad things, you're not paying attention enough. You're not like really careful. And I still remember the first time I posted something on eBay, just to give an example. I was very excited. It was something I'd bought at an antique store. We got the parts that we wanted to finish up hers, and we are going to sell the remainder. And I didn't care if I made any money or not. The whole goal was to get her set complete. But it was really fun, and it kept bidding up, and I was checking it every couple minutes, and I'm like, it's $135. Oh my goodness. It's like, and I felt like I was very
You were
grounded. And
excited.
I was having a great time, but I didn't feel like I was like, oh, I'm going to make millions and quit my day job. It was just like, oh my God, I didn't know that this would even anyone would bid. And there's people bidding up, and we're coming to the last minutes. And she wouldn't let me, she made me stop checking it. She thought I was going to ruin it or break it, or she just got very uncomfortable with my enthusiasm around that versus I was just having fun. Different people's nervous systems take things different ways. They've had different experiences. But we can learn those upper limits from our parents if they were very nervous about things like that. I think once I started understanding, oh, I limit my enthusiasm because my mother wasn't comfortable with me being enthusiastic. I want to be balanced and grounded for myself. I don't want to be carried away, swept away with the moment in terms of being unsafe, but I can let myself be more enthusiastic. And I had to do a lot of tapping on it, and I still catch myself sometimes. But I think noticing where it comes from can be some help there. Can we do a little tapping on?
Yeah. Even though I have upper limits,
Even though I have upper limits,
I am so human.
I am so human.
I may love closeness.
I may love closeness.
I may love service.
I may love service.
I may appreciate eagerness.
I may appreciate eagerness.
And I have my limits.
And I have my limits.
What if I deeply and completely accepted myself?
What if I deeply and completely accepted myself?
Top of the head. I have upper limits.
I have upper limits.
Eyebrow. Even the things I deeply enjoy.
Even the things I deeply enjoy.
Side of the eye. Even the things I'm really good at.
Even the things I'm really good at.
Yeah, even the pleasures I really enjoy.
Even the pleasures I really enjoy.
I want to recognize and accept my upper limits
I want to recognize and accept my upper limits
and give myself healthy ways to find balance.
and give myself healthy ways to find balance.
I have upper limits.
I have upper limits.
I have upper limits.
I have upper limits.
On the arm. Maybe even some I haven't acknowledged.
Maybe some I haven't even acknowledged.
Someone mentioned that, when you give attention to a client, for example, in a session, that's an energetic act. Like to be in a quality of our artistry is a profound place for me, for example. During the time when, until very recently, I shifted my client scheduling system so that I always had a half hour between clients. So if there's a 20-minute session, there'd be a half hour. If there's an hour session, there'd be a half hour. I even schedule my sessions so that they're 20 and 50 minutes. Why? Because I believe if you go there with someone in a deep way, which is why I do this work. I want to have deep relating and engaging in my life. That tank is filling tonight, and it feels good. And when we're done here in 15 minutes, I'll be done. What I know from experience is my upper limit is 90 minutes. A lot of people can do like weekend workshops. Yeah, I don't. I can go 2 hours in the same way that I can fit 8 people in my car. But it's gonna take some stretching. It's gonna be uncomfortable. Um, and acknowledging your own upper limit. People ask me for sessions of 90 minutes. I can do one of those a month, maybe, but I don't leave it for people to schedule because I have to feel into what's my capacity. Now that Adira is older, I have more, my limit has changed so that I can do like 2 hours of sessions with those 10-minute breaks, roughly 10-minute breaks, and then take a break. So when we have an upper limit that we recognize and we accept, and we're not forcing it, we may allow it to flux and change with our lifestyle, with the things that are going on, with recognizing, oh, I have more capacity right now. It feels good to extend it. But adapting, you know, if somebody schedules, like have people coming in one after the other, what does it feel like to have, a 10-minute potty break scheduled into the flow? So that's coming. To me, as someone mentioned, our primitive brain knows that, well, it's not so bad if I get chocolate. Like chocolate is magic. Like we're not under threat as long as there's chocolate. For those of us that like chocolate, sweets, food, there's a quality of soothing the primitive brain at the limit and extending it a bit. Okay, but you're still at the limit, and that's where I see a lot of dis-ease come from. In the anxious realm, in the stress realm, in the driven and shooting on myself realm, is that there's an upper limit that we're not acknowledging, recognizing, accepting, and then adapting. I believe in our power to adapt and the things that matter to us to come to us. And
Yeah.
then, of course, there's lower limits. Do you want to talk about the lower limits of our, you
Well, I
know?
thought I'd love to do some tapping on that the reaction people get to the upper limit, just that,
Okay.
kind of judging of it. Because I think one of it's easy to judge other people. How dare they be that excited? Like when I find myself judging other people, I often have to ask, what do I need to ask for? Like bringing it back to me. So I'd love to just start like, because a couple of people shared that it's like they get um they get reactive to other people being too excited for too long. So can we just do some tapping there?
Yeah, sure.
Even though my body reacts when they're that excited,
Even though my body still reacts when they get so excited.
and I judge them pretty harshly,
And I can judge them pretty harshly for going over my limit.
I notice my survival brain gets kind of triggered when someone's that excited.
My survival brain gets triggered when someone's that excited.
I'm not sure it's safe.
I'm not sure it's safe.
I'm not sure they're being reasonable anymore.
I'm not sure they're being reasonable anymore.
And I'm worried about them getting carried away.
And I'm worried about them getting carried away and me getting carried away.
Yeah, top of the head. I acknowledge that there's some good logic here.
I acknowledge that there's some good logic here.
Eyebrow, and maybe I don't have to get judgmental about it.
And maybe I don't have to get judgmental about it.
Side of the eye, yes, I need to get judgmental about
Yes,
this.
I need to get judgmental or else they'll never change.
Under the eye, what if I don't have to be judgmental?
What if I don't have to be judgmental?
Under the nose, what if I can acknowledge that's where they are right now?
What if I can acknowledge that's where they are right now
Chin and ask for something different.
and ask for something different?
Collarbone, I can ask for what I need.
I can ask for what I need
Under the arm without judging them.
without judging them.
Top of the head, sometimes they're very young.
Sometimes they're very young,
Eyebrow, emotionally or mentally.
emotionally or mentally, or
Side of the eye.
age
And part
wise.
of me, yeah, the side of the eye, part of me likes being more excited sometimes.
And part of me would like to be more excited sometimes.
Under the eye, what if they can be good practice for setting boundaries?
What if they can be good practice for setting boundaries
Under the nose, and a role model for me at other times.
and a role model for me at other times?
Chin, I don't think they should get that excited.
I don't think they should get that excited.
Collarbone, well, maybe I'm just having a hard time being around that much excitement.
Maybe I'm really having a hard time being around that much excitement. It's
Under the
painful for
arm,
me.
yeah, under the arm. And I can limit that. I can limit my exposure.
And I can limit my exposure sometimes.
Top of the head, I'd like to play with this and see how I can be different around this energy.
I'd like to play with this and see how I can be different around this energy.
Just take a nice deep breath.
I like that. Feels savvy.
What a concept.
Well,
Yeah,
it came to me like I'm watching our time. We have about 10 minutes. Um, when we go over our upper limit, there's pain, there's repulsion, there's too muchness, there's
yeah,
a stress and strain. When people talk about that, um, and so like if somebody like pulls us immediately or shocks us outside of our nervous system, our biochemical limits, our thought limits, our whatever. There's a lot that's going on as an organic being. It's happening in many dimensions or one. It could be that just one nerve pathway is getting too much signal and that is contributing to your limit. Putting in earplugs, for example, can expand my limit for what can happen in my space rather much. The lower limit the same way. When we're banging against the lower limit, we're with somebody else. Um, any so if your capacity, like you've just been of service, you like being of service. It's one of your love languages, but you've been speaking it nonstop. It feels from morning until night, and then somebody makes a request. What happens inside you when you've reached the lower limit? And what happens in other people that you care about when they reach their lower limit? How do we recognize, that person has hit their lower limit? That person in the mirror has hit their lower limit. Um, what do I do when I hit my lower limit?
what do I do when I hit my lower limit?
Hmm. What do I need when I hit my lower limit?
What do I need when I hit my lower limit?
What do they do when they hit their lower limit?
What do they do when they hit their lower limit?
What do they sound like?
What do they sound like?
What do they look like?
What do they look like?
What do I look like?
What do I look like?
What lower limits have I hit in the last week?
What lower limits have I hit in the last week?
Any come to mind, folks? You feel free to share it in the chat. Like one of the limits that I hit was, there's this. I love being a dad. If I'm doing a tremendous amount of that, um, there's this other thing, like what I'm getting to do here, where I get to be in a group of adults doing adult work. And it's a pretty common thing. You hear people say that. I just need an adult conversation. Um, and um, and even being able to explore and be revealed more. It it's a quality of filling up other things. These are not like hard containers. When life force is in that, I'm um, I'm being of service in a different way, or I'm being present in a different way, or I'm expressing my body or my voice in a different way. And it's filling us up. What we can notice is sometimes affiliated parts of us will start finding balance. Instead of being quite so depleted, there's some filling that happens. I believe that this happens with Netflix and chill. I believe it happens with, for some people, scrolling social media. It may be depleting them or pushing them up in limits other ways, but it might be helping them feel something that really had hit the lower limit, like I'm just alone and I need to feel like I'm part of, like, if I feel a need for kinship, there are certain places I go, because if I stay too low in the kinship, the sense of being a part of community and the like, that's not a good place for me. It's just, it feels, uh, yeah, it's not necessarily dark, but it's heavy and flat, if that makes any sense. Um, and so when we recognize like what are our lower limits, and how, you know, I you can tap on the shoulds, and I shouldn't be this tired. I shouldn't not want to change another diaper. You can, I should go and answer my emails. That's a doorway. We've learned that that's a savvy doorway. Um, if we're shitting on other people, that's again like they're probably hitting one of our limits. What is it?
Yeah.
Um, Acceptance and adapting in a more savvy way. I is one of our explorations here, that we're in the midst of. And we hope that you'll share the things that you're noticing. Like, oh, I I'm now starting to look at this a little bit more, as a spectrum of things, like my need to be of service and my need to not be of service, my need to connect with people and my need for solitude, my need to move and my need for stillness. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
both have upper and lower limits, that
And
fluctuate.
we might have stretched your limits a little in the last hour and a half. So I just like to invite you, like, if just notice what you're feeling. Take a breath and notice if some parts of you might feel, oh, good, I feel recognized, I felt connection with community, I cleared some stuff, I might feel good. And other parts, we might have had some dusty corners where things were sitting, and moving those can stir up a little dust or leave us feeling a little stretched. There's nothing wrong with feeling both. I think our society really likes to teach us you're either happy or you're sad, like one thing at a time. And I don't know about you, but I'm a complex being. I'm fully capable of feeling many contradictory things at the same time. So
Yep.
if you're feeling like, oh, this felt really good, and I'm feeling a little unsettled, realize we've poked into some corners that most humans never even look at. Most people go with the blinders on, trying to drive themselves their entire life. And we're looking at different ways. We're kind of biohacking our system and looking at better ways to run our lives and our bodies in loving ways. So if you're feeling a little stretched or a little unsettled, congratulate yourself. You did something good. You stretched yourself in ways that you might not have otherwise. And I think that we're often taught that if you don't feel good and blissful at the end, that I must have done something wrong. I often will like, oh, what did I do wrong? No, I didn't do anything. I just grew some this time and I'm still integrating the processing I did. Maybe that's really lovely. This can serve me for a long time. So I just want to invite that we might have been stretching some of the limits on the sides that we weren't really talking about as we talked about shoulds and limits and beliefs about things and how the world works.
Certainly a vulnerable act to acknowledge our own limits. Um, it's a tender act to recognize that the people that we love have limits, when we kind of wish that they were even more superhero than, um, than they might be behaving at that moment.
Yeah.
Appreciate all of you for being here and providing so much support and energy. Um, yeah, I and thank you, Kathy.
Oh, my pleasure to be here. I always feel honored to be in this space filled with
We'll be doing some
courageous
more
people.
on this. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, right.
We'll be doing some more on savvy relating and engaging. There's a number of different aspects. Appreciate those of you that have shared. I'm still integrating the answers that we got. Kathy and I are going to talk about what is alive and ripe for us next. So your ideas, thoughts, and um, especially real world situations are very helpful for us in tuning this to be practical, applicable. Um, and adapting so that we can all be thriving. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Great work, everyone. Good job.